Okay, so Castile, what are our starting actions? Well, first of all, we probably want to think about hiring some advisors. We have a particularly poor king, we have an even worse heir. So, the fact that King Juan is a level 1 admin means that he is going to contribute 1 admin point per month. The maximum is 6, the minimum is 0. And it's the same for every one of the 3 categories. So he is a 1 in admin, a 1 in diplomacy, and thankfully he's not completely useless, but still mostly useless. He also has a 2 in military, which means he is slightly better at fighting stuff, but still really bad. Bearing in mind the maximum is a 666. However, his heir, Enrique, is a 000. This means that he is complete and utter garbage. He does nothing. So it is my suggestion, and chat correct me if I'm wrong here, that you disinherit Enrique and try and get somebody new. So Juan is still relatively young. He's 39. He is married, although his queen is quite old. So he may not necessarily get another heir. But I still think that having anything else, even a regency, would be better than having a 000. So what happens if you have no heir when your king dies? Well, first of all, the consort will take over. So the queen consort, Maria de Trastamara, will take over instead of the king, and then at that point you'll get her stats. Queens can do most of the stuff that the queen consorts can do most of the stuff that the kings can do. I think there are 1 or 2 exceptions, but I'm actually drawing a blank on what those might be. And then if you have no consort, no heir, and no ruler, then there's a couple of things that can happen. 1, you become a personal union under somebody else. So, for example, if you are part of, say, the French dynasty, then France might take over your country. This is not to say game over. Absolutely not. This just means that you become subservient to France for an amount of time. If you stay subservient for too long, then they will just integrate you. However, as a country as big as Castile, it'll be pretty easy to break away. And you can similarly do that to other people. So marrying into other nations with the express intent of expanding through marriage is exactly what Austria did. It's what the Habsburgs were famous for. And that is modelled in the game. The second thing is you will enter what's known as a regency. Regencies are... In fact, no, regencies are if you have an underage heir. We'll talk about that in a minute. The other one is that just a random noble will rise up and become the new ruler. You will always have a ruler. If that happens, then there's possibly going to be a civil war. There'll almost certainly be pretenders, so it'll like spawn some rebels. But beyond that, there's no real downside except for the fact that their legitimacy will be incredibly low, and it'll take you some time to like rebuild the stability. So it just means that you'll be a bit unstable and a bit vulnerable for a while. Then, if you have an heir who is younger than 15? I play Republics mostly, so I'm not 100% sure how monarchies work. Then you will have what's called a regency, whereby a regent will rule over the country, usually the consort or a trusted noble. You don't get to select them though, that's all done automatically. You will not be able to declare wars, you'll not be able to enter into some other diplomatic agreements, and you'll be somewhat limited until he comes of age and becomes a monarch in their own right. So regencies, not terrible, but will certainly slow you down for a while. Getting into a personal union with somebody else, not necessarily the end. In fact, certainly not the end of the game. You can break free, and you can even break free as a very junior partner in that agreement. But my recommendation would be look up guides and things like that to deal with that. That's not really in the scope of what I'm trying to do here unless it actually happens to us. However, we are going to spend 50 prestige to disinherit Enrique. He is garbage. He's rubbish. I don't want him becoming ruler. So we're going to press this button. This will trounce our prestige, which is this number here. Boom. And now we have no heir. This could be bad. This could also lead to a personal union. So when Juan II dies, there is a good chance that Aragon will get a personal union with us. This means that Aragon could potentially become ruler over Castile. However, one of the little things going on with Castile and Aragon is historically Castile gained a personal union over Aragon, and that was by doing a royal marriage between the two. How's that work, chat? This is actually my first time playing as Castile. So as much as I'm recommending new players play as Castile, I haven't actually done it myself because, like I said, the situation in the game has changed over time. So I'm not 100% sure how this works. You need different gender heirs. Well, I have no heir. So should I marry Aragon? I'm going to marry Aragon. This is what I would normally do in this situation. So we're going to click on Aragon, which will then lead us to this screen. You can then open these categories and get a number of different interactions. One of those interactions is dynastic actions, which is this one here. And we can then choose to have a royal marriage. We're going to press that button. It has the little green tick next to it saying that they will accept. And we'll click on it, and then it will give us the details of what this royal marriage will mean. So this isn't necessarily marrying into somebody to make them your queen. This is just a member of your family is marrying a member of their family. The actual family trees aren't really modelled in this game in the same way as they are in, for example, Crusader Kings. It's just a member of your family is marrying a member of their family, therefore you have a royal marriage. It is still a linking of the two dynasties, however, and it can lead to, for example, an Aragon ruler becoming king of Castile. Even if it's not the Aragon ruler, it could be a member of their dynasty, in which case you would have the same dynasty, which means that personal unions are more likely in the future. It's complicated. Don't worry about it too much. So we're going to confirm this, and we're going to form a royal marriage with Navarra, because I've clicked on the wrong people. We're then going to do the same thing with Aragon, because that's what I meant to do. So we are now married with both of the other two powers in Iberia. We could also do one with Portugal. I see no real reason not to do this. So let's go and send one to Portugal as well. Now there is something to be considered when you are sending out these marriages, and in fact I'm doing this in the wrong order, is you have a set number of diplomatic slots. These are the number of relations you can have with other countries. So if you click on your shield, let's just do this as if I'd been clicking on somebody else because it will reset. Click on your shield. It will automatically go to their diplomacy, like it will remember who was last. All you need to do is click on this button down here at the bottom, the one with the eye and the scroll. This will then switch the diplomacy screen to your own screen, and from here you can see a lot more information about what your own nation is doing. And then the important number is up here, diplomatic relations. So currently we have a relation with Aragon, Navarra and Portugal. You can see our relation with them next to it in green, so plus 73. Diplomatic relations are on a sliding scale, going from minus 200, which is I hate your guts, we're almost never, in fact it's basically impossible to have any kind of diplomatic relation between you, except for wars, and then plus 200, which is the absolute maximum, which is basically we absolutely adore you, we want everything to do with you, and we are probably allied. So we have got very positive relations with Aragon, Navarra and Portugal. We also have a royal marriage with each. Each one of those takes up a relation slot. Now the important thing to remember is relation slots are done on a per country basis, not on a per agreement basis. So if we have a royal marriage with Aragon and then we decide to get an alliance with Aragon, that's still only one slot because these are both relations with that same country. Shenrir, thank you very much for the raid. So, Portugal. We are going to be wanting to get an alliance probably with Portugal, with Aragon, and with Navarra. To get a little bit more information about this, you can also see that ruler's attitude towards your country. So if we click on, for example, Aragon, we can see the plus 73, that's our relations with them, and then also the little green heart. That means that they are friendly towards us, and that also means that they are incredibly likely to accept an alliance. So compounding the royal marriage with an alliance means that we're almost certainly going to get an alliance with Aragon and with Portugal. Navarra, on the other hand, is threatened. This means that they are terrified of us. They are really worried that we're going to invade them. And what does a country that's really worried about invasion really want to do? They want to get an alliance with you. They want that promise of safety. So if we send an alliance offer to Navarra, they are incredibly likely to accept that alliance because that's basically us saying, we're not going to try and kill you. Like, we're friends. We might try and integrate you peacefully later on, but that's something for the future. However, if we go over to somebody like France, they really don't like us. They're in fact rivals, and this is something we will talk about in a moment because we need to choose our rivals. And being a rival means that we naturally have a very poor relation with France. They're minus 83, remember, out of minus 200. And they are very unlikely to do anything positive with us diplomatically. They will definitely not accept any alliances. They will almost certainly not accept royal marriages. And there is a heightened chance of war between our two glorious nations. So relation slots. That's what I was talking about. So we currently have 3 relation slots in use. We have those royal marriages. Now, if we sent a alliance offer to Aragon, then we would have a royal marriage and an alliance. That still only counts as 1 relation slot because they are the same country. The next thing I should mention is diplomacy is handled by diplomats. Diplomats are these blue guys up here, and you can see that there are like 4 specialists within your nation. So you've got merchants, colonists, diplomats, and then missionaries. And you remember that one of the national ideas for Castile is to get an additional missionary, which every country begins with 1. Then when we get our national idea, which is this one, the Spanish Inquisition, we will automatically get a 2nd. Then by getting religious ideas, we can get even more missionaries. And then you can basically put these specialists to work in certain areas in order to do things. And one of the things that diplomats do is they broker agreements. So we have just sent out 3 offers for a royal marriage, which means we have just sent out all 3 of our diplomats. And we cannot do anything else diplomatically until they return to us. So we can see that this guy is coming back in 4 days, 3 days, and 2 days. So when we unpause the game, we'll probably cycle through about 2 days, pause it again, and then try to make an alliance. So there is going to be a little bit of a delay there. But we've already locked them down. We've already got them into a relation slot, which means they're more likely to accept things in the future because they don't want to go over their relations limit. And also, the royal marriage means that they are liking us a lot more. We are now bound together through blood, and that is a big link for European monarchies in general in this era. In fact, even today. So we've kind of set the groundwork to preparing an alliance with the entirety of Iberia, except for these guys. We're the Spanish. We're incredibly Catholic. We are the most Catholic monarchs of Spain. And this is rightfully our clay. We want it. We deserve it. It is Spanish. However, we have a truce with them. We cannot go to war with them until February 1448. So in 4 years' time from now, well, 3.5, we're not going to be able to do anything hostile to them. So they are safe for a little while. They are probably doing the same thing as us and seeking alliances with the other Islamic states down here. Huzzah! For example, Morocco, Tlemcen, Tunis, and most worryingly, potentially the Ottomans. We'll need to be watching Granada with interest because this is a hostile power very close to our borders. They have a -38 primarily because we're different religions and also because we have been previously at war. Plus there's just natural friction because of our borders being so close to each other. We also have border friction with our other neighbours, with the exception of Portugal for some reason. But Aragon, we do have a bit of friction. Navarra, we have a little bit of friction. And also England, we probably have a bit of friction because England does border us. Now you will notice there, Portugal, historical friends. This is a modifier that can happen at the start of the game. There might be events which introduce it later. I haven't had a huge amount of experience with that. But this basically means that Portugal and Castile are very likely to get on. And this is one of the reasons that I recommend Portugal for players who want a little bit of a safer start, a little bit less expansionist, a little bit more to do with trade and colonialization. Is Portugal, because they have that historical friends modifier with Castile, which means that an alliance between these two countries is very likely, and you can basically rely on Big Brother Spain to protect you. So that is just something to consider there. That's all of that. We do need to take a look at advisors, and to do advisors, we're going to need to delve into that most glorious things of Europa Universalis IV, and that's the economy. And for the economy, you go to the economy tab. This gives you a bunch of numbers. Don't worry about this too much. The main number that you need to worry about is this big one in green. This is telling you how much money you earn every month. It will automatically calculate all the money you get from taxes, from trade, from production, from diplomatic agreements, from war indemnities, from everything. And it'll work that out against your expenses, paying your armies, paying your navies, paying war indemnities, paying advisors, maintaining your provinces, And then you'll come out with the balance here. As long as it's green, you're fine. You're making money. So right now we're earning 5.7 ducats a month. And all of these calculations are done on a monthly basis. So this basically means that we have about 5 ducats to spend in terms of building up our military, possibly getting some advisors, definitely getting some advisors. So that is what we're going to look at next. So let's take a look at the admin advisors. So we'll click on that, and then we are presented with a list of different choices. As we mentioned earlier, the +1 indicates how many monarch points they will boost for us, and then just below that we see the price. These guys are costing us a bit of money, so 1 ducat a month for the level 1s, 4 ducats a month for the level 2s. We earn 5 ducats. I probably want to get 3 advisors, which is going to be 3 ducats of level 1, so 3 times 1. So we're going to go with that. Before we do that though, we should probably go and take a look at the estates, and I'm going to have a drink because my voice. So the next thing I want to talk about before we do the advisors, because this is kind of linked, are the estates. So this is one of the features which is new in Emperor. Estates were around for quite a long time, but they're in a radically different form. So this has changed quite a bit. There are 3 estates, and these guys are basically fighting over your territory. Now I should mention that different countries can have different estates, and some countries don't have any. Some can have less, some can have more. So the Ottomans, I think, have 4 different estates. Poland, I think, has 4. Russia has 4. England, I think, only has 2. Lubeck and other merchant republics don't have any. And then these are basically different factions vying for control within your nation. The standard set are just 3. Clergy, nobility, and burghers. The clergy are the most interested in the administrative side of your nation. The nobility are most interested in the military side of your nation, and you can probably guess that the burghers are most interested in the diplomatic or trade side of your nation. You can kind of see how this is always subdividing in those 3 different categories. It matters. So the clergy are the guys who are running taxation. If you have a happy clergy, your people pay more taxes, and you can get various bonuses related to the church. If you're a Catholic state, then those bonuses will generally transfer over to the Pope. Happy clergy means happy Pope, means you can get more out of being Catholic. The nobility are your military. So the aristocrats basically control a large portion of your armed forces early on. Indirectly, it doesn't go into quite so much detail. But a happy nobility generally means that you can have bigger armies, you can get an easier time recruiting and replenishing your losses, and they can also unlock like unique generals who are going to be a lot more effective than most of the people you can recruit. And then you have the burghers. These are the townspeople. They are most interested in making money. Happy burghers means that you have a good trade network which is very efficient and very good at making money. You can also interact with the burghers to get cheap loans if you're very short on money, or to leverage their naval strength in order to very quickly build up a fleet. There are many other ways of interacting with these guys, and we'll talk about that very briefly. So if we go over to the clergy, we can see that we have a number of privileges if we click on that button. These privileges are ways of interacting with your estate faction, which can modify how your country works in certain ways. So for example, the clergy land rights can increase your governing capacity. This allows you to build a much wider, much more expansionist state. Early on, probably not that important because you're going to be under the governing capacity. However, later on, as you are expanding in territory, you're probably going to need to be concerned about governing capacity, and there are a couple of ways of doing that. Papal emissary. This is basically getting better relations with the Pope in exchange for the curia powers costing more. That's all related to the Pope. We'll talk about that in a minute. The religious state, whereby you automatically gain an extra admin power every month. I am sure that there are some streamers and YouTubers and other players that will swear by this. I personally don't use this because it has a big downside, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then we've got the Clerical Advisory Council. Now this is the one I am interested in. If you take this, then you will gain clergy loyalty, which is this button here, and you can see the loyalty currently is at 50%. It will increase their influence by 10%. They currently have an influence of 15, so it will go up to 25. And it will not cost you any crown land. This is the important factor. If you have the Clerical Advisory Council, it will reduce the cost of administrative advisors. Now you can see why I'm linking this to hiring advisors. If we have the Clerical Council, and we're about to get it, then we are going to get cheaper admin advisors. So if we now head over to this, we can see that these advisors are now 0.7 ducats a month as opposed to 1. So we can now say, okay, we're ready to hire somebody. So we can either get this guy that increases our prestige, bearing in mind that we just disinherited our heir. We have really bad prestige, and that is going to negatively affect our country in quite a few ways. Or we can increase the stability. Stability works on a -3 to +3 factor, with 0 being like the neutral number in the middle. We are currently 0, so it's neither positive nor is it negative. It's fine. I don't think we necessarily need to focus on increasing our stability at the moment. However, our prestige is very bad. So we're going to go ahead and hire this philosopher. It'll cost us 11 ducats up front, and then also 0.75 a month. So you can see that our money has decreased accordingly. We're going to do the same for the other two as well. So we're going to go to the nobility, and we can see that the nobility powers are somewhat different. So we have the governing capacity, that's the same. The monthly military power, that's the same. We can hire generals more cheaply. We can get more army tradition decay. We can increase the amount of manpower we generate, but at a cost of taxes. And we can also get the aristocratic councillors. This increases stability cost, but also decreases the cost of military advisors. We're going to go and grab that guy. And then we're going to go and hire a military advisor. And again, we're only looking at the level 1s because I don't think that our economy is really strong enough to maintain a level 2 yet. It probably will be relatively soon, especially with a country the size of Castile, but right now we're just going to take a look at the level 1s. And the only one that's available is Diego Lopez de Haro, who is a land force limit modifier +10, so he allows us to maintain a larger standing army. So we're going to go and grab him. And then we've got the Barcas. The Barcas also do governing capacity, they increase diplomatic power, they will allow us to recruit cheaper admirals, they will decrease navy tradition decay, which is like the army tradition, but, you know, for ships. They can increase our monthly prestige. Now this is actually quite tempting. We could really start our prestige going up rather quickly if we get the patronage of the arts. We'll consider that. And then the commercial advisory board. Diplomatic advisor cost reduction, stability cost modifier. We'll grab him as well. And then with that, we can hire a diplomat, and we're going to choose one of these guys. So we have the morale of navies. This is basically how long your ships will stay in a battle before they retreat. Spy network construction is the effectiveness of your espionage and your spies on other countries. I don't think we need that much because we have some other ways of expansion, primarily our rivalry with Granada. And then diplomatic reputation. This is our chance of getting diplomatic agreements through. Now remember, we don't actually have our alliances made yet, and the chance that the country will accept an alliance offer is very much related to your diplomatic reputation. The better your reputation, the more likely they are to accept. So we'll take that. So now we have 3 advisors. We are increasing our monarch point gain in each category by 1, and then we can see here how many we are gaining every month. So 4 admin, 4 diplo, and now 8 military. And the reason we are getting 8 is because we are focused on military power. Castile starts with a focus already selected, most countries don't. If you want to focus, then it basically reduces the other 2 by 1 and increases the focus by 2. So it takes 1 from admin, takes 1 from diplo, and adds both of those points to military instead. It is kind of important early on that we get a strong military because we want to grab our military technology as soon as possible. So by focusing on the military that way, we are going to be able to achieve that. So we're just going to leave that focus for now. But later on, if we, for example, get an admin idea, then we are going to be needing to invest more of our admin points into generating those ideas. So we'll probably want to start focusing admin at that point, or diplomacy, or whatever. This allows you to have a little bit more control over the strengths and weaknesses of your country outside of the random chance of how good your ruler is. It's quite useful. Yes, so that is something I'm going to talk about now, is the negatives, the downsides of the various estates. So this is still a new mechanic. So I definitely don't know the most efficient way of managing your realm. There is probably different theories and thoughts out there. I don't know what they are. This is still very, very, very new, and I don't think there is anything established for it yet. But there are 3 estates, which we talked about, the clergy, nobility, and the burghers, and there is actually a 4th estate, which is very important, and that is the crown. So you are the crown, you are the ruler of your nation. The amount of land that your family directly holds is the crown land. And as a general rule, you want to try and keep crown land above 30%. So I'm kind of pleased that basically every country I've seen so far starts at 29% crown land, just below that 30 threshold. And that means that we are suffering a number of penalties. Our tax modifier is reduced by 10%. Because of how strong the other estates are, they're basically able to take a couple of liabilities over our state and avoid paying some of the taxes which they are due. It reduces our absolutism. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then it also increases the liberty desire from subject development, which means that if we have vassals, like a certain blue country over here, then it is going to make those vassals a lot more unhappy. And this is one of the reasons I no longer recommend France as a beginner state, is because you need to worry about the happiness of those minions. And one of the ways that factors will be your management of the estates, and it just kind of snowballs. There are a couple of ways that you can manipulate your crown land. You can sell some of it off. If you need some very quick money and you don't really want to spend interest on loans and stuff like that, then you can sell off 10% of your crown land and earn a certain amount of money. I think it's dependent on the development of those territories. You can summon a diet. This will increase the loyalty and influence of all of your estates, not your crown land, the factional estates. And you will have then an agenda, which is basically a meeting, and then you need to basically choose in which faction you want to support, and they'll set you a mission. And then finally, you can seize their territories. This will give you 5% crown lands. However, it will piss off the other estates. You're taking their territory, of course it would. So the clergy would lose 0.7% of their land, the nobility would lose 3.5, and the burghers would lose 0.7. All estates lose 20 loyalty, so right now they are at 50 loyalty. They are pretty content. They're not very happy, but they're also not angry with you. That would reduce it to 30. And if any of those estates have less than 30 loyalty, they may rise up and rebel, which is a problem, because it means you have to fight some bad guys. However, you will probably have worked out that 50% loyalty minus 20 equals 30. Danger zone. However, if we summon the diet, we'll have 55 loyalty. So we're going to summon a diet. And then after that, we're going to seize their lands. And there we go. Everyone's still very happy. We now have more than 30% crown land. We have no negative modifiers. I think that there are probably positive modifiers if you control more crown land. I don't know. Haven't actually done that because I tend to sell it off. So once you basically stay above 30%, you can sell off any excess and make a chunk of cash. So yeah. The agenda of the diet, and this is how the events in this game work. It will provide a pop-up screen like this. You read the text and then you make a decision based on what you're trying to do. The estates of Castile have proposed agendas for the summoned diet. Favouring one of the estates here could have large benefits in the long term. The clergy bemoan the poor regard the Pope has for our nation. They call for us to reaffirm our standing as good Christians by solidifying our relations with Rome. The depletion of our manpower reserves is worrying to the nobility, who warn that Castile will be left defenceless should our enemies seek to take advantage of the situation. They advocate that we consolidate for time and allow our reserves to recover. The burghers call for us to increase our commercial presence in the Tunis trade node, an action they claim will greatly increase the prosperity of our nation. And then if we hover over each of the choices, we can see what exactly it is that they are demanding from us. So, to complete this, the Papal State's opinion of us must be over 100. We are a good Catholic nation. The Pope already quite likes us, with a plus 25 religion. If we were then to send one of our diplomats on a relations boosting mission, we could increase that by up to plus 100. Well, plus 100 is the general amount. That is true regardless of what country you're talking to, unless they are a personal union or a vassal, in which case they can boost it by up to 200. So if we sent a diplomat to the Papal States, we could actually theoretically boost this to 125. That is completely possible. And they've set us a deadline of the 11th of November 1459, which is in 15 years from now. It's not going to take 15 years to raise relations to the Pope. And in fact, for another reason, it's a very good idea. We'll talk about that in a minute. The nobility want us to have at least 90% of our manpower reserves. So currently we have 8,300 in our reserves. These are basically the pool of troops that you can pull from when either reinforcing losses that your armies have suffered or when building new units. So building one new regiment of infantry, for example, will use 1,000 manpower. we're already quite low. We have 8,000 out of the absolute maximum we can have of 27,000. It's gonna take some time to hit 27,000. As a base rule, it will take you 10 years to fully replenish your manpower pool. They're giving us 15 years, plus the fact that we're probably going to need to recruit some troops, plus the fact that we might go to war. That one seems a little bit more dubious. We might not be able to achieve that. Especially if we have a war with Granada and Granada's potential allies in the future. Or we can increase trade power in Tunis, so we need to make sure we have at least 25% trade power in the Tunis map mode, and the way we can see that is by going to the trade overview, which is this button here. Now I should mention that these map modes, this is customized. This is how I've set it up. The exact order of these icons for you is very likely to be different. So please don't go, oh, it's the second from the second on the right on the top bar. It's not going to be that way. You'll need to look at what the actual icon looks like. And then you can access all of them with these 4. So for example, if you're after the trade map mode, go to the economic map modes and then scroll down to trade, which is actually the very top. So just click on that and then click on trade and it does exactly the same thing. So the world is subdivided into various trade nodes, and don't worry, I will go into more detail on this in the future, and if you want a really detailed overview of trade, I do have a trade tutorial up on YouTube, which you can find at youtube.com/MordredViking. It is a little bit out of date. It is 3 expansions ago, I think, but 90% of the information in that tutorial is still correct, and basically all of the information in the advanced tutorial, which I've done after that, is also correct. And the advanced tutorial is more about how you can use money to manipulate other people. Again, it's one of these things, like money on the surface has uses in building armies, building buildings and that type of thing. Go below that and then you can start worrying about mercenaries, you can start worrying about bribery, about subsidizations. That's advanced stuff. Don't worry about that. It's just the very fact that it exists, which is cool. It's again one of those tools that you can start to use when you're more experienced in the game.